The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
As a former New Hampshire state representative who marched with Dr. Martin Luther King in 1963, he currently serves on the New Hampshire Commission for Human Rights. He's a product of Birmingham, Alabama, where at one time he had to guess how many jelly beans were in a fruit jar just to be able to vote.
We've come a long way, but we're not there yet.
Together we will explore the visible laws, invisible laws, and the structures above and beneath our human surface that keep us reaching for the stars. It is his goal to work with you in putting Nashua back on top, to be voted the #1 city in the nation again.
We are in a crisis situation, and that's what we're going to talk about.
I'm Harvey Keye. Welcome to Nashua Strong.
Hello, Nashua. Welcome to Nashua Strong by Harvey Keye. And we do this as often as possible because we know that this is one of the strongest cities in the world. Been nominated the best city in this country 4 or 5 times to raise kids, so it has to be pretty good. I am so pleased to be here with you, but I want to give a little shout out to Dan and Dick. Those are the guys behind the camera who does so much work for us. And they're always on time, and they do such a great job, and we would just want to thank them for what they do. Now, in the business of fishing, and I don't like fishing, they say when you get a whale, you got a big one. And today I have with me a big one. The big one meaning that he covers the state of New Hampshire with a story saying, let's save men's lives in the state of New Hampshire. And actually it extends beyond that because people talk, people sing, people dance, and they carry messages that are really great. And I won't take a lot of his time because he has a lot to say, I think. The guy that I'm going to introduce you to is the president of the New Hampshire Prostate Cancer Coalition. The president, and I call him Mr. President because he is the president, and he is the president of this coalition. But before I let him take over, I have a couple of questions I want to ask him, and I've known him for some time, but I haven't asked him these questions. So, Mr. President, I sent you one statement and it said, were you born? That was the first question.
Right.
It was supposed to be, where were you born?
I expected that's what it meant.
And then now that it came out exactly the way I was thinking, were you really born? Because you know so much.
Well,
and you do so much for our community, for our state and our country. I think maybe you came here before the Big Bang, and we just didn't know. You know, Michelangelo carved out David, and
yes.
He says, he was already in there. I just chipped away, and I'm chipping away. Here's the president. So, let me ask you, where were you born, sir?
I was born in Winooski, Vermont.
Winooski?
Vermont.
Vermont.
Right next door to Burlington, Vermont.
Yeah, right next door to Burlington.
Yep.
And you obviously went to school there.
I did. And by the way, my birthday is the exact same day, month, and year as Bruce Springsteen.
That means you can sing.
No, it just means that he got more of the right kinds of talents that I would have loved to have had. But it's always fun to point that out to people. That
yeah.
He and I have something in common.
Have you ever met him?
No.
But you listen.
I do. I love his music.
Do you play music any kind?
I do.
What do you play?
Oh, goodness. I play guitar. I play bass. I play drums. I play accordion. I play harmonica. Just a few things. I love being creative. I'm interested in music, but I'm also interested in the music instruments themselves because they're really works of art.
Now, You went to school, elementary school. I like to ask this question because
Yes.
in elementary school, you just left home, and you've been coddled by your parents. And you get into elementary school, and the teacher sometimes is not liked, and sometimes they're loved.
Mm-hmm.
How was your first grade teacher?
First
And
grade
who
teacher
was
was,
that?
well, her name was Sister Suri, and it was a nun and religious order. Sisters of Mercy were the ones who operated that school that I went to. The interesting thing about my first 2 years of grammar school is they were half days in French and half days in English.
So, do parlez-vous français?
Mais oui.
Très bien,
The reason that that's interesting is years later, I moved to Manchester, New Hampshire, and they had the very same experience in their culture of the community with a lot of people who were moving here or had moved here from Canada. So French was a very pronounced language here in Manchester, New Hampshire, on the west side of Manchester. So there's a lot that I felt in common when I finally came to move to this.
What year was that, Dick?
I moved in 1974 to Manchester, New Hampshire.
Out of Winooski.
I did, yes.
How about that? Well,
Culture shock,
look
you know.
at the treasure we took from Vermont.
From a community of 7,000 people to a city of 100,000. It was a
Big time.
big change.
Yeah. Now, what did you learn that sticks with you from that first grade teacher, or who was really a sister?
I learned from her, and I learned from several other teachers as I proceeded through grammar school. They all kept pushing me to do better, to reach further with my knowledge and my talent. And I, at that time, being the kind of a rebel in my nature, I would always push back from that type of reaction from teachers. But it turns out the teachers were quite right. The more I decided to show them, if you could use that attitude expression, the more I surprised them with my skills and my knowledge and such. So it was a fascinating adventure going through grammar school, with the only exception is that I was the heaviest child in the school. So that put me in a disadvantage. There was a lot of societal things to overcome when you're growing up and you're reaching adolescence and you're starting to be interested in socializing and you're the heaviest young man in school. It certainly is a challenge.
Did you like to read?
Love to read.
What did you like to read?
When I started reading was probably around 3 years of age. My father and mother were rabid readers of paperback novels, comic books, and things like that. So I made sure, and my parents made sure, that every time the neighborhood people came in to trade paperbacks or trade comic books, that I would get my share. And I would actually sit there and read. And if I didn't understand a word, I would put my finger on that and ask my mother or father, what's the word? What does it mean? Can you tell me how to use that word? And by the time I got to grammar school, in the preschool grade, then there was first grade, so I was in a kindergarten environment. I was the only kid in the class to read that could read, and I mean read like 7th, 8th grade level. And the teachers were amazed, and they would, whenever there was a chance for somebody to read something in the classroom, I was always their first pick.
Wow.
It was fun.
That means that you were a genius at that age.
Well, I'm not so sure genius is the word, but I was stubborn. I would use that word for me because I wanted to read everything I could get my hands on. And I was frustrated at times when I couldn't borrow a book from someone. I even went to our local community library as a young person. My father helped me get out my first library card. And within 2.5 years, I had read about 75% of the books that they had in the library.
See, everyone has a genius.
Okay.
And some of us just don't find it.
Mm-hmm.
Even animals have genius.
Yeah.
Take a fish, for instance.
Sure.
Take him out of the water. Just reach down and pick him. He's looking for air, right?
Right.
Put him back in the water.
Up they go.
That's his genius.
Yep.
What is the first job you had after college?
Well, our local community that I grew up in was the recipient of a federal grant program back that began in the 60s. And over a period of 2-3 years, they selected communities, and it was called the Model Cities Program.
Model City.
Model Cities.
What year was that, Dick?
Well, I went to work for the city of Winooski's Model Cities Program in 1972, straight out of college. 71.
That was the first federal program of its type.
Yes.
Okay.
It was designed to be a experiment. There were 150 grants given out across the country, and a lot of competition for those grants. And as it turns out, the only grant that went to a community as opposed to a neighborhood was the one that went to the city of Winooski, Vermont, a city of 7,300 people at the time. All the other grants went to cities, like the city of New York had 5 grants for different boroughs. They would target the most impoverished, the most disinvested parts of those neighborhoods. And they were given a free rein on how to use the resources. And one of the things that was always intriguing is that it was the only time federal dollars could be used to match other federal dollars. So if you were to get a grant from the Department of Labor and it said you have to put up 25% of that grant to get that grant, you had to usually come up with it out of local resources or donations. Well, this Model Cities grant program said the Model Cities grant can be your local donation.
Wow.
That was the only time it was ever used. So what it did for the city of Winooski is everyone who was hired was challenged with the task of, let's leverage these Model Cities dollars as far as we could. And there reached a time while I was there that we were bringing in 7 times more in federal funding, other federal funding, than the Model Cities money we actually had. We leveraged it 7 times over. We were getting $1.6 million a year, and we were bringing in $9, $10 million and more from year to year. So we were able to do a much more comprehensive program to redevelop the community, to reinvigorate the population. We made grants to families so that the breadwinner of that family, male or female, if they had dental problems, we made grants available to them to go and get their teeth fixed. If that was an impediment to employment, we funded a solution to that impediment. And we also then provided training and career counseling so we could get people to land jobs, because we were trying to break the cycle of poverty. Our program was engineered for that purpose, and we were working as a team. There were about 25 of us in that overall staffing situation, chasing other dollars, getting them, trying to find ways to best use those dollars to revitalize not just the community, but the people in the community.
How well did you do?
We did very well. Today, if you looked at the city of Winooski, it's now a city of about 14,000 people, so it's almost double its size. When I was there, it had gone through an urban renewal project, so they had a large part of its downtown was vacant land, and slowly but surely, through the patience and the commitment and the vision that the local leaders had and the local administrators, they were able to identify redevelopment money and apply for future federal programs that were emerging in those days. And as a result, today, if you went up there, their downtown is so intensely developed today that there's more tax revenue coming out of that downtown 20-acre land source than the entire rest of the community. It is supporting the city's programs.
Where is Winooski really located relative to Burlington?
It's across the Winooski River is where you'll find the city of Winooski.
About how far north, south, west?
It's on the north of the city of Burlington.
On the north.
They share the boundary between the two is that river. Yep.
Is there a lake
Yes, there is. It's Lake Champlain.
Champlain? Yeah.
Absolutely. The Winooski River flows into Lake Champlain.
How about that?
Yep.
And that's how you grew up, where you grew up mostly.
That's where I grew up. I grew up in a environment where education was important. It was the priority that we felt as youngsters in the community. I grew up with the vision that I was hearing about this Model Cities program, that they wanted to remake the community, because the community, like a lot of communities in New England and much of the East Coast, had suffered through great losses of employment. Major employers moved out, or they moved first from New England to the South, and eventually from the South to overseas. And Winooski had gone through, in its short time of existence, losing major employers 3 times. So when you're having 25 and 35% unemployment in a community, there is no hope. There is no dreams. There is no aspiration that could fill the hearts and minds of people. Until that federal resource came along, people were empowered. There was a lot of citizen involvement in the process. When we'd have a conversation about this project or that project, we'd get hundreds of people to come out. So that community was reinvigorated to believe in itself and to see the future.
How long did you stay with that program?
I was there for 3.5 years.
And what did you do afterwards?
Well, I was recruited by the federal agency that had provided them that funding initially. I was recruited by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. There was an employee on their staff that was going to take a leave of absence and go work for the College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor, Maine. And he was going to be gone for 2 years, and they need to replace him right away with somebody with some experience. Because his major responsibility was overseeing 5 Model Cities grants in northern New England. Manchester had a Model Cities grant, Lewiston, Maine had one, Auburn, Maine had one. So Portland, Maine another, and of course Winooski had theirs. So they approached me and said, please, come here, work with us, and after 2 years, if he doesn't come back, we can look at making you a permanent employee. So it worked out. It was a close call, but it worked out. I got to stay here, and I loved Manchester from the time I stepped foot in it. I loved New Hampshire from the time I stepped foot in it. There was something about Manchester with its blue-collar background, and we can say the same about Nashua. Nashua had lots of factories and still has a lot of beautiful memories from those factories, but now it's being redesigned to fit the current aspirations of the city. So those are inspiring things because they're challenges. A lot of places in America would demolish all of that. New England, we save it, we reuse it, and we make it better.
You have a vision. Where did it come from?
Well, it comes in part from, I guess, from the way I was raised. I was always told to think bigger, reach farther, work harder, and always give my best. And that's something that somehow or another, once it's encapsulated into your own nature, you can't shake it. It's been with me my entire life, and every job I've ever taken on, I approach it with the same vigor and the same attitude. You earlier, before we started the show, you asked about my wife. Well, that was, my wife and I are very complementary in terms of our interests and our energy. And between her and I, we've been involved with over 30 organizations, nonprofit organizations in our lifetime, and actually being the founding members for several of them. And you don't find that normally with people. In fact, it's hard to get people to be involved sometimes with charity work. But with us, my wife says we have a permanent disease for which there is no cure. When asked for help, the answer is always yes with us.
And it comes around twice as big, and you don't even expect it.
No.
And don't look for it.
No.
That's fantastic. We're so happy that Winooski got rid of you, and we got you over here. Let me ask you.
Sure.
Were you ever a member of the of the New Hampshire Prostate Cancer Organization, just as a member?
Yes, I was. I was recruited by a member of their board, Jeff Cantor. And I knew Jeff Cantor for many, many years. Jeff Cantor and his children were involved with a local soccer program in Manchester that I was the president of. And Jeff Cantor was a man who, as a businessman, he was always willing to help to try to make the program better. And I was always looking for ways to make the program better for the kids, because it was the kids that mattered, and their enjoyment of the sport and their development within the sport. And so he and I collaborated on fundraising and doing all sorts of really new things that normally weren't being done. And he knew that whenever he had an idea, he could come to me and we could discuss it and find a way to make it happen. So we parted ways after his kids left the program. But I always remembered Jeff, and I went back to him on 3 or 4 occasions. I said, look, Jeff, my family's got, we're struggling financially right now. I work for the federal government. I wasn't getting enormous wages. But I'm looking for a safe, reliable vehicle, blah, blah, blah. And he was in the business of reclaiming vehicles that have been totally damaged or whatever. And he always made sure he found a car that would be a perfect fit for our situation. And so years later, he approached me and he said, we could use you on the New Hampshire Prostate Cancer Coalition board. With your skill set, with your approach towards helping and solving problems, we sure could use that help. And my wife and I talked about it and thought about it. And our answer was, yeah, but it's going to have to take us as a team. Not just one of us. We both are volunteers. And that's how we got involved.
I've been a member of this organization since its inception. I've never seen you at a meeting.
Okay.
And maybe I missed the meeting like I almost missed today, and
Yep.
Dick was on my head about it.
Yep.
But thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to ask you, now you've been the board president for how long?
I think it's almost 5 years now.
5 years.
Yep.
And I just have seen the growth and the involvement of the community and neighborhood and reaching out. And I think it's because you learned to read at the 3rd grade and were so intense about reading. But reading is such a powerful knowledge. It's a weapon. I think and skill that you can use in so many different ways.
Sure.
And you did this when most kids were shooting marbles, and you were reading.
Yeah.
And
I was curled up with a magazine or a comic book or even a paperback.
now we're so happy. And the reason I wanted you on this show is because one is we're having a huge oncoming of Elton John.
Tribute artist.
Yeah, tribute to Elton John for our fundraiser.
Right.
And it is so important that every household, every person who lives has a brother, a brother, uncle, has a man in their life.
Right.
And we are approaching that time now when that October 7th is coming as a first show this year.
Yep.
And I can't tell you or ask you, because I marvel at your ability, your capacity. I'm not amazed at your intelligence. I can look at your intelligence, it just oozes right out of you, and how to reach over the fence and around the corner to reach people in so many different ways. And it makes me proud to be a member of the board. What, Dick, do you see us doing in the next 3 to 5 years as a board of directors?
Well, what I hope our board will buy into is a vision, and the vision is this: for most of the time I've been involved with the Prostate Cancer Coalition, it's either been based in Manchester, Nashua, or Concord and Manchester in terms of where the volunteers come from, and hence that's where most of the activity flows. But if we're a New Hampshire Prostate Cancer Coalition, that means we should be visibly active throughout the state of New Hampshire. We need our voice to be seen by people who are dealing with prostate cancer or don't yet know that they have it in their family, but seen as an asset, a resource, a partner, and an advocate for people who are facing this disease or will soon face it. And to do that, we need to take a risk. We need to extend our voice to many other parts of the state, and that's why we're trying to get a show up in Lebanon, New Hampshire this year, so we can have an opportunity to have as our audience the Upper Valley community, people who live and work in the Upper Valley area. We wanted to have the show in other venues around the state, but they're not quite ready. The COVID problem has made it difficult for them to bounce back and make shows available. But we're trying to bring a quality entertainer into their venues around the state, and we're going to have more shows next year and more shows after that if we can do it, because we want to use that as a way of bringing people into the building so we can talk to them about prostate cancer and introduce to them who we are and look for their help to help them in their community, because it's not possible for us to be physically everywhere in the state at the same time. So we're trying to do what I would refer to as team building. And we're doing it by reaching out to parts of the state in order to do that. So with the entertainment is the hook, if you will, but the mission and the goal is to educate, inform, and recruit.
How does your membership, part of your organization has a membership, how does that work?
Well, we're going to be focusing on that as well in this effort. We're going to try to get people to sign on as members of the New Hampshire Prostate Cancer Coalition so that we can use that list of contacts to be able to announce to them things that are going on, inform them about clinics, online training programs through FaceTime and things like that. There's all sorts of resources that we can put out there for people to use, but we need to first know that they're interested in this, and we need to have that partnership.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break and say hello to you after we come back. We'll be right back. So, see you after we come back. We had a little break and had a sip of this beautiful water in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we're back to say hello to my president, Dick Hatin, who is taking our beautiful statewide organization to new heights. And we got some places to go.
Yep.
I have a few more questions going to get Dick to answer, and one of them is, in a statewide organization, well, let me say it this way. How do you think your organization, our organization, impacts Nashua, New Hampshire?
Well, the way it impacts Nashua, New Hampshire is this. We have people on our board who come from different communities. So that's one element of this process. But the other is that there's no community that's exempt from or excused from the problems of prostate cancer. It's everywhere in our population, human population. It's a disease. It's a rampant disease. Yeah. And I just was reading statistics this morning. It is the fourth for the last 5 or 6 years. It's either fourth or fifth amongst all the cancers that are out there in terms of mortality. That is a serious number. But what is amazing to me about that is that how many people know about prostate cancer as a disease? How many people know about the treatment choices that a prostate patient may have to consider? How many people know about the fact that prostate cancer affects people even as early as in their 30s? How many people know that prostate cancer is an inheritable condition? It can be passed from father and mother to their children. And it is amazing to me that there isn't more interest in prostate cancer as an issue, given its mortality numbers, given the percentage of the population that gets impacted by the disease. It's not just one man who feels the pain and goes through the challenge. It's the family, it's the coworkers and others. It affects all of us. So our challenge is in Nashua and any other community in New Hampshire is to ignite in people a desire to know about this disease, to be looked at by the healthcare authorities as somebody who wants to know more about the disease. Make it part of your annual physical. Make that information known to your children and grandchildren. I grew up, like so many people of my generation, when somebody was sick and died, the answer that I heard was, they died of an old person's disease. I never knew what the disease was that they had, and nor would I have ever known if it had any effect upon me 2 generations beyond them. Well, to me, we want to avoid that. We need to make sure people know about the disease, know about its inheritable factors, know that there's reason for hope. There are cures that are not very far away from the reach of science. And on top of that, the quality of their life can be just as easily sustained as that they have now. What we have to overcome is obstinance, stubbornness, not properly informed or educated about the disease, a lot of misinformation about the disease. We've all known it, Harvey. You've heard it before from people. It's an old person's disease, and you'll die of something else before you die.
Oh, it's a heart attack.
Yeah.
Everybody dies from a heart attack. Right?
They don't, it's almost like they dismiss prostate cancer as not worth their time. And the worst offenders with that attitude happen to be men. Now, I salute the people who are involved in breast cancer awareness campaigns, because they have made it so that women are not uncomfortable talking about the disease and talking amongst themselves, mothers to daughters and sisters and aunts and everyone else. They are up to date on all of the issues that surround the issue of breast cancer.
Are you saying?
But you can't seem to push men into that direction.
So that was my.
So what do we have to do is we have to reach out to the women to encourage the men to open up their minds and open up their eyes and get checked and followed up on. It's not in any way demeaning. It's not insulting. And if you have the disease, there are going to be plenty of choices. So we got to dismiss all of these wrong ideas and wrong opinions and misinformation. And so how do we do that in a place like Nashua? Well, I would like to have a concert in Nashua next year, or some other event that we could tag into that has a wide audience, because the only way to reach people in a significant way, in a meaningful way, is to have ways to communicate with them. This show is an outstanding example of a way to do that.
You mean this show?
This very show,
Nashua
not just
Strong.
Nashua Strong, and you as the advocate and the voice on the show. You're giving people information that they will never get anywhere else except when after they're diagnosed with prostate cancer. Why do we have to wait before we find out about it? Why do you have to be told that you have a cancer and this and that are your choices? And when you learn of it, maybe the choices you have are now being limited because you've waited so long. Women don't go through that with breast cancer.
Do you think that
so we can overcome that.
Yeah, the urologist could play a part?
Absolutely. And your primary care physicians should play a part. Anybody who goes in for a physical, in my opinion, should be asking about, are you going to be checking for prostate? Are you going to give a baseline of information about my condition so that if there's any change, then we can take on another step forward and find out what's causing the change.
Is there any way, let's say, for instance, I had a physical 2 weeks ago, 3
Yep.
weeks ago. Nothing on there said about prostate.
Right.
Is there any way, I'm not asking you to come up with that now,
Yep.
but we could get the medical people, the organization, the medical, uh, what do they call it? Medical, there's a book called Medical, oh boy, I can't think of what it is, but all the doctors get it.
Yep.
It's called, I won't try to get you to get in this pit with me, but it's a medical magazine, a medical notification that all doctors get to see what they're talking about in terms of illnesses. I can't.
I understand where you're going with it.
Medical journal or
Yep,
something like
yep.
that. But you know, I just think if we keep pushing and keep appealing and
Yep.
we've got to be attractive.
Yep.
Because they don't want to hear it. If they're not attracted to it,
Yep.
we got to find whatever they want to get into this and give it to them.
Yep.
And I think we're able to do that down the road.
We have obstacles that are inherent in the culture. The first obstacle is men are very private about their anatomy. We may give off the aura of being strong and tough and rugged and all that stuff, but when it comes right down to it, men are sensitive about this topic.
They
And
say, I don't want to be bothered down there.
yeah,
That's a common.
whatever whatever their excuse is, and I would say to them, and I don't mean it to be in a confrontational way, but that man, that individual would never accept their wife or their daughter holding back medical information from them. If that daughter or wife is sick or their mother is sick with something, that man wants to know.
No, he wants to know.
And he wants to make sure they're going to get the best of care.
Yeah.
And that they're going to be comfortable and that they can be supported. But men don't want to talk about their illness or their condition, or they're fearful that it might impact them and make them less desirable to others.
Less strong.
Less strong,
Less
okay?
big
You use that term.
mighty.
Yep.
Only because
Well, you know,
name is man.
life is much more than that.
Yes.
And I'll use Jeff Cantor as an example, because to me, he opened my eyes to this, and you were right there with him in that regard.
Yeah.
When he would talk to me about his battle with prostate cancer, and he had it 17 years from diagnosis to the time he passed away from prostate cancer, he didn't change anything about the way he lived. He skied downhill a lot. He organized downhill races. He went out and fished in the ocean. He ran his business. He traveled all around the world doing exciting adventures. The disease was not going to change his life. It may have shortened it, because any disease that you're exposed to for a long time is eventually going to win. But he was not going to be denied whatever life he could cling to. And he clung to it with a ferocity that I found incredibly inspiring. And that's what I want other men to do, is not see it as a problem, see it as an opportunity to reevaluate what they're doing with their life and how can they do it better.
Wow. That's a vision that if we could capture it and put it under the nose of all the men, not only in this state, but in this country,
Yeah.
around the world. People in other parts of the world have prostate cancer also.
Exactly.
How many men are expected to die in this state this year?
This year, I would put the number this way. Let's break it down. The number of men in their entire lifetime, so that means adults all the way down to children, who are going to be diagnosed with prostate cancer is about 1 in 7.
1 in 7 men
1 in 7
in the state
men.
of New Hampshire.
Males. I prefer males, okay? So that means that in the state of New Hampshire, we have about 1.6 or 7 million people in our state, I believe.
Yeah, 1,300,000.
Okay, 1,300,000. Then that means about 650,000 are on the male side of that count. So out of that, if you divide that by 7, you're looking at about 35 to 40,000 people every year are going to learn that they have prostate cancer. 25% of that number is 20% of that number will die from prostate cancer
In the state of New Hampshire.
in the state of New Hampshire. So that's about
Folks,
5,000 to 6,000 men a year will die.
Listen, listen, and listen closely. You don't have to be a male, you have to be a person. And if you're a person, you had a male in your family. 5,000 to 6,000 in the state of New Hampshire will not be here next year.
Yep,
That's called death.
yep.
Let me thank
And
you.
you know, the thing that's important with this, it's not that they died from prostate cancer, is how do they live their life with prostate cancer? Because we all can't escape cancer. When it's there, it's there. There's some cancers can be cured, but for those that it isn't curable, how do you live your life? What are the choices you are going to make? It's not what's happened today, it's what you're going to do tomorrow and the day following that. And those choices affect not just you, but your family, your coworkers, your friends, your neighbors, your community.
Folks, you know, we could go on for a long time, but I want to not wear my thank you out or welcome out to the president of the New Hampshire Prostate Cancer Coalition to come into the city of New Hampshire, Nashua, which I call my favorite city, and give us some information about this deadly disease, a killer called prostate cancer. I am on board, and I'm not going to get off board. They said I was supposed to leave after a year or two on the board of directors, and I refuse to get off the board because this thing called prostate cancer is insidious. It doesn't help any of us. And I'm going to try to spread the word and education in any way I can for the rest of my life to help us become a better community, a better state, a better people, and grow stronger and better, higher and better as human beings. Mr. President, I want to thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Visiting us and bringing us this fantastic information, and we'll get you again.
Oh, yeah.
And Nashua, if you're here, we have a tribute to Elton John, the Palace Theater, October 7th, this year. And if you get a chance to get in before it is sold out, because tickets are going fast, and the regular ticket is only $35.
$35. Let's give them some other information. The artist who's going to be performing, his name is Jeffrey Allen. You can go on the Palace Theater website and you can watch a clip of one of his performances. And he has been doing Elton John for over 20 years, and he is based in Las Vegas, where he does that performance most of the time. If he's not there, he's on a cruise ship or he's going overseas and putting on concerts. He is amongst the very best impersonators of an artist, and he doesn't just dress like him, he acts like him, he sings like them, and he is as gifted a pianist as Elton John is. So here's your chance to see Elton John in as close an experience as you're going to get for $35.
Additionally, this is Elton John's last world tour.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So get a chance to see somebody like him. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.